The War Machine Tower has become a subject of great debate within the TDS community. Many people are defending the devs, and many people are saying the devs are wrong for doing what they've done, right? Death threats have been sent, extreme actions have been taken, and people are kind of left wondering who's actually in the right here. So I'd like to first disclose that this video isn't like 100%, I don't know, court worthy per se, but I'll try to get a pretty good and try to paint a pretty good picture on, who is right about what. Okay, man, this map kind of sucky, bro. You get less rewards for, like, the same time. Like, this map's literally just better, bro. Like, okay. Nope, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Wow. Well, I don't know what to say about this, honestly. Like how am I supposed to respond to this? Okay, great. Anyways, so this all starts back in 2020 when War Machine is first added, and one of the first, probably the most major exposition is the video where, John Roblox displays War Machine in all its glory. Very powerful tower, right? Put that bad boy alongside Mecha Base and you have the two most wanted towers in TDS history. Skip forward some time and you'll see that Razziradix made a statement saying that War Machine alongside Mecha Base and some others would eventually be released to the public within the next year or years. So this is basically where all the drama stems from. Right then and there, Razziradix promises us War Machine, and this statement is retroactively voided or nullified by Below Natural 6 years later. It's not a very good look for Below Natural, all things considered. Kinda just looks like it's BS, you know what I mean? Like, really. It's voided 6 years. So, who's right and who's wrong in the situation? Alright. So here's where I get to come in with my view. Okay, so as someone who has played since 2020, I believe I could speak for a lot of people when I say that it wasn't even really Razziradix's statement that War Machine would eventually come to the public. It was literally just community consensus. Like, as someone who's been there since, War Machine was created, like, it was kind of always thought by the community that, like Mecha Base, we would eventually get our hands on War Machine. One day it would come out, and it would finally be ours. So, to take that away out of the blue because you want to just award contributors is kind of BS to me. Alright, I mean, you could also say it's kind of BS because, for example, like event towers, you have the developers saying, we don't care about OGs. You don't care about them getting their own stuff, but when it comes to contributors, then you care. Which, you could argue is a double standard, but there's technically, some differences and stuff. Right, that's not like the crux of my argument or anything. But what do I think needs to happen? Well, what was said, but I mean, pretty sure Wikia said this one's not confirmed, but like, it was said that War Machine is kind of very generic in concept, and so, it wouldn't really stand out, which is true. However, no one really cares if it doesn't stand out or not, okay? What we want is War Machine, because it's this cool tower that we've wanted for years. So we don't really care if this thing is going to be the strongest tower in history. We just want the tower that, we've seen as eventually coming to us for years now. So back to the crux. Who is right? Are players right to outrage and to be angry at the developers because War Machine is no longer coming out to the public? I would say yes. I would say that because Razziradix promised it to us, and because, that eventually leaked in And, you know, over the years, that became community consensus, right? Because since he said that, a lot of people heard that and were like, oh, okay, so War Machine's eventually coming out. And so, you know, as the years passed on, that eventually, you know, word of mouth caused basically everyone to come under this belief. And so while, you know, in retrospect, you can look back on some of these things and see, like, you know, the hints, like, for example, this iconic photo, where no War Machine is present. So you can kind of see, like, hints towards that it wasn't actually going to become, you know, an evergreen tower. However, because it was never, like, you know, set in stone that it wasn't coming to us, you know, like, if you're going to have it be said verbally, you should probably, you know, also say whenever you don't want it to come to the public, or clarify that. Because, I mean, you could just say, oh, but Below didn't know, which is, maybe he doesn't know, but it doesn't really matter if he knows or not, because it's already been too long, man. Like, taking it away now is just kind of a dick move, all things considered. Like, you didn't let Atraz. Atraz did it without Below's permission, or without Below's oversight, and didn't fit his vision, but sometimes you gotta roll with the punches. Like, because you weren't quick enough to act on it, it is not really a great look for you to just decide, you know, on a whim that it's no longer coming out to people. Even if you already had this be your vision since the very beginning, you didn't clarify that. And that's the issue here. You know, one thing I'd like to touch on is how a lot of people have been like, oh, we're not going to talk about this drama anymore because death threats have been levied and things like that. Those things are terrible, but don't use it as an excuse to just shelf the topic, or to just like, oh, well, you know, I guess we'll never know, and we're gonna, come on, guys. Napalm, I'll be dead at. Why does everyone use napalm, bro? Napalm is so buns. No one's clicking the revive button, are we, huh? Who's gonna do it? Alright. Okay. Back on the train of thought. I gotta ask. You know, I do think that that's, you know, serious thing. You know, type of thing that you always do want to take seriously. However, I just want to clarify and make sure no one uses it as like an excuse to just, oh, well, I guess we're gonna shelf the topic now. You know, the PR disaster is avoided because now it's taboo. I don't want people being able to do that, because, you know, I think that this is actually a serious matter, and just because there's been bad actors doesn't mean that we should just totally forget, and the topic should just never be touched on again. And in layman's terms, let big paradoxism win. So what should be the fate of War Machine? Should a new tower be created and given to the community? No, we want actual War Machine. Like, we just want War Machine, bro. Alright? Okay, look, no one really has, at least like me personally, I don't have a problem with admin towers. Right, I'm fine with max scored. My issue is with War Machine specifically, because, you know, it was promised to us 3,000 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, I was promised this back in the golden age of tower defense simulator, so I really want it. And we're robbed by not getting it. Robbed, I tell you, man. Yeah. So ultimately, War Machine should be released as a public tower. I believe that is like the right thing to do in this circumstance, because look at that range back there. I believe it's the right thing to do in this circumstance because we were promised the tower, and even if it wasn't, like, you know, Below Natural saying it, Below Natural didn't crack down on the statement until years later. And I get people saying that, oh, maybe Below didn't know about it. Doesn't really matter if Below knew about it or not, because Just because you say, oh, well, I didn't know or agree with that, it doesn't really void like what's already been said. Like I don't think in a court of law you can just go like, oh, well, you know, I didn't know about that part. Right? I mean, it's kind of your job as a developer to be on top of these things. Right? It's your job as, you know, the head honcho of Paradox in games to be on top of this and to constantly, you know, converse to the community and be able to tell them things like this. That is what is his responsibility. Right? And unfortunately, he didn't do a great job at that. And so, here we are. Years down the line. Yeah, so I just don't want anyone to kind of shelf this topic because it's taboo now or whatever. Not to say that, like, you know, death threats aren't like a big thing, they are, but just because of that, that should never be used as a way to just ignore actually like good criticism. You know, like how John Roblox did. War Machine should totally be released to the public.